Welcome to part 2 of my inks on the Feeding Frenzy poster art / DVD cover. Here I'm inking the lead female role, Christine, who's played by Jillian Bellinger. And while I'm zoomed in here, Mike Stoklasa, the one who does all the Plinkett reviews, the Red Letter Media stuff, he's a character in the movie, but he's not featured on the cover. And I still wanted him on the cover though. So if you look here, you can see I actually hid his name, Mike, on Christine's earrings. You can see it here highlighted in red. Back to the inks though. Whenever drawing female characters, especially ones with a likeness, you want to make sure that you draw with as few lines as possible. So Jillian is a very pretty girl, and I wanted to leave her face open, and because the more, every line that you add basically adds about, 5 or 10 years or something to the face of a female character. Kind of let the coloring do its job, or just let the implied shapes in the few lines you have in the face, kind of speak for themselves. So kind of puts pressure on you to just add a few lines, only the right lines. Luckily here, Jillian has very expressive and cartoony eyes, so it kind of fit into my style anyway. I didn't feel like I had to adjust too much of the way that I drew females normally to capture her face. There was just a slight difference in the shape of her face and her chin from what I would normally draw. So on a side note, you might have already noticed it a few times. I was using Snaps Pro as my screen capturing software, and for whatever reason at this point, maybe because I had been recording for so long, like over a couple of hours, it started giving me these weird glitchy black shapes in the recording while I'm drawing. So like earlier on Christie's eyelashes, like it looked for just a second like there was a big black square over her eyelash, and here there's a couple times that it happens while I'm inking her pants, and it's kind of a weird thing, but like I just saw it happen just a second ago. It's a little bit distracting, but I'm not adding big black squares, it just happens to be glitching a little bit. The screen refreshes and then everything looks fine again, but here I am checking kind of like on the texture of her shirt, going back to the reference material to see that it was kind of the texture of like a pair of long johns or something. It's got like thin kind of rib texture to the shirt. I was going to try to add that into the line art, but I think I ended up just adding it in the coloring because I thought it would be too busy if it was in the line art here. You don't want to add too much spot black, because in the foreground I have a bunch of these globkin creatures that are going to be almost all in shadow, and if then if then the character Christine is in shadow, then she'll kind of blend in with them and she won't stand out as much. But so I'm using a combination of creating shapes with lasso, or and then filling them, or I'm using my brush tool to close off a shape that of lines that have already been drawn, and then using my magic wand and then selecting it to fill it. And here I'm using a shortcut where I'm inking the bottom of her shoes by just using the magic wand to select the tread of the white part of the tread of her shoes, and then just using the nudge tool to move that selection down a little bit so it creates a gap between the black tread line, and then where I fill it, it kind of creates a little bit of a halo. It's just a fast technique to get some white lines in there without actually having to draw the white lines. Much faster than if I was doing that traditionally. So I'm kind of, you know, again, jumping all over the place, going from the upper to the lower body, and zooming way in and then zooming way out, just so I can take a look and see if that's what I want. You know, you kind of have to, working digitally, it allows you to try new stuff, that you can be bold with, you know, a big area of texture of spot black, and then you can undo that if it's too much. Here I realized that although I'd added some blood on Christine's leg in the right spot, that she actually had some more on her shirt that I had to add, so I did that on its own layer, and then knocked back the opacity just as an indicator to me later that that'll be on its own layer, and that I'll you know, colorize that separately. I used that same trick on the belt just now, where I'm making the selection with the wand tool and then moving that selection so that whenever I fill it, it creates a bit of a halo at the bottom of the belt. So I wasn't sure how much texture to give in her, like in her pants or whatever, and I think I might have ended up overdoing it in a couple of spots, and then I ended up revising it a few times because I didn't want there to be so much detail that her lower body just kind of disappeared. But I also wanted to make sure that it indicated shadow and stuff. I was able to fix, I think, fix the tonal values in the coloring as well. So just working my way back up and down the legs. And back whenever I was, you know, drawing with a lot more sort of 90s era rendering, you know, whole jeans area would just be completely covered with rendering like that. Here I am kind of breaking up the lines of the seam along the side of our pants that I created the same way, where I filled in, you know, I drew a line in black on a separate layer, and then ran an action that makes those black lines white and then adds a black contour line to it, so it makes it a lot easier. And here I'm just totally scrapping the wrinkles that I kept fussing over along where her hip folds in with her thigh. Just knock it all out with white and start again. Yeah, I kept zooming in and out just to make sure that I wasn't going overboard with the rendering, but still making sure it had some good depth. So here I am zooming out because I'm closing in towards the end of it, finishing things up, and I want to make sure that the shadows are, you know, framing her body correctly and that sort of thing. So turning the inks layer off and on, checking that out. I was overall pretty pleased with the way the likeness came out. And finally, we see a final finished version, unobstructed by anything in the foreground, just Christine on a layer by herself. Stick around and watch part 3, where I ink a Globkin and the character named Kyle.